Now I get to start again. Hi, once again. Do you notice ASMR videos on YouTube where people have a ball, like a sphere, made of some sort of gum or silicone, I don't know what that is, and then they cut it, and then each cut expands the sphere. And so there's one cut and the sphere expands, and then there's another cut and the sphere expands, and it seems never ending. There isn't eventually, but in that way I'm also seeing life happening, where the cut represents you being in a situation where you kind of have to jump through the portal, or practically speaking, you have to do something that makes you a little bit uncomfortable, a bit anxious. Maybe there is a whole surge of anxiety or some sort of fear really showing up right before the moment when you're about to do something. Simply because you know, even if you don't think about it consciously, your body knows. On one level you know that after you do this action, after you make that decision, after you do whatever you need to do, in other words, after you cross the portal, your life will not be the same. Possibly, maybe. There is a huge possibility that your life is going to look completely different. And that's a bit scary. It's like being on a balcony in a video game, and then you have to jump onto another balcony, and then there's like a gap in between, and you're kind of standing and getting your courage and your bravery to jump on the other side. And you add so much preparation into jumping onto the other side, and that consequently you expect some sort of a release. That you might even expect that when you jump that there's going to be an applause or a firework, or somebody's going to be like, bravo, yeah, you made it. But then like you jump and there is no celebration on the other side, because once when you come to the other side, once when you cross the portal, you actually do the decision. You are now in a new territory, and in this territory you meet people who, they all have crossed that portal. They all had to go through exactly the same, maybe less or more intense preparation of jumping through the portal, but they all jumped it. And it's kind of like a normal thing and necessary thing to do. Those who didn't jump, who were behind you, they look at you and they be like, oh my god, you jumped, that's so brave, I could never do that. But then those that meet you after you jump, to them, they don't even acknowledge, because to some of them, jumping through portals is a necessary, normalized thing to do. It's not something that you celebrate, it's something that is just connecting you in between this territory with this territory. And as a result, you find yourself in this new territory feeling neutralized. So if you were anxious before that, or excited about it before that, now you come into this state of realizing, oh, okay, that's okay. Like, there is no too much fuss about it. And then eventually you find yourself in a space where you have to jump again, and again, and again, and again. And after a while you realized how much time and energy you have invested into being afraid, into feeling the anxiety, into negotiating with yourself, whether you're going to jump or not, or how you're going to do it, and if you're really ready to do it, and what are the consequences of potentially jumping or not jumping, and everything, all the mathematical calculations come to you, and then you realize after a while that you've been jumping so much, and it always comes to the point of, yeah, I jumped, and I'm still me, I'm still here. Life is kind of, I'm not going to say that life is normal, but it could be. It could as well be. And this point of neutralization is kind of like, it could in some moments be even disencouraging. And here I got the message that you don't need to be disencouraged. Because it's not that, oh my god, you jumped so many times and now it's all for nothing. It's absolutely not for nothing. Because what happened in all these jumps is that your body calibrated for jumping. You calibrated your nervous system in your body for recognizing an opportunity and acting upon it. And each time jumping becomes less and less scary until eventually you come to the point where you know you can jump. And jumping in and of itself doesn't scare you. Not just that your body calibrated, you also develop trust within yourself that you know you can jump, and that's not one of your assets. Practically speaking, when your soul wants to expand itself, you get a desire to do something, to have something, to become something. And let's say, for example, you want to be a musician. And you start making music and that feels good. As long as it's within your bedroom. And then there comes a time when, in order to expand as a musician, which is something that you really do want, you need to come out and show your music to other people. You need to get out of your bedroom. You need to collaborate with other people. You need to present yourself. And then you have this moment of either going in the direction of, yeah, but I can't. Yeah, but I'm shy. Yeah, but. Or you can acknowledge this and work with it and be like, yeah, but that's my fear speaking, but I don't need to be afraid because I fill in the blank of why you believe in yourself and what gives you strength and what moves you forward. Or you can practice doing things that make you scared a little bit, like jumping through the portals or jumping from a balcony to a balcony, and eventually bring yourself into the territory where opportunities are being presented to you. And it might even be, this is also one of the reasons of what is happening while you are jumping and you still feel like there was no big applause at the end, is that you're being prepared for finding yourself in a territory where an opportunity presents itself to you with a very limited time span. So you might have very few seconds or minutes or day to act upon it and to really claim what is it that you want. And you will probably not have time to do the breath work, take some time, take a walk, meditate before you jump. You will need to jump immediately. And so this jumping through is kind of just connecting you. One territory with another territory. And there is one example that I forgot to mention earlier before, but it came to me earlier when I was processing all of this. When you imagine you live in a village, in a small village where you don't have taxi service, there's no need for it. Everything is here. And then one day you move into the big city, and that already feels like going through a portal. It feels exciting. It feels a little bit like, oh my god, I'm going to a big city. And then they have taxi service over there. And having a taxi ride feels exciting for the first time. And you're like, oh my god, I have a taxi ride. Right? But then after a while you live in the city for long enough, and taxi ride it's just not exciting after a while. You might be already deeply living your life to the point where you don't even notice that taxi service is something that could be seen as, wow, majestic. You might already live that life where you have to move stuff from A to B, and taxi, like calling a taxi and being in a taxi and having this experience of somebody else driving a car while you just sit in the back and look outside through the window and admiring the architecture of the city. That is just the connector in between two other really big jumping through the portals. And this, what used to be a jumping through the portal, is now just a normal thing. It's just something that you do. It's just something that is necessary. It's not even something celebratory. It literally applies to situations such as applying for a job that would completely change your life, that would relocate you to another part of the world, or applying for a job that once when you put in your CV, you know that you will not be perceived as the same person that you used to be, or just leveling yourself up in one way or another. So yeah, don't be discouraged because you're just preparing yourself. Another thing that I was was something that I personally have encountered, and I was personally confused so many times in this life, and it seems a little bit unfair that now when I'm sitting here talking to you, now I get to see the clear image of what's going on. But when I was practically living life instead of sitting here, which sitting here is also practically living life. But when I was in the middle of it, there was no clear picture to show me what's going on. But now there is. Long story short, so before you find yourself or your God or your spiritual awakening or whatever, your connection with the universe, you know how and what applies to you, but you know what I mean. Before you find your own connection to source, I'm gonna name it like this. Or better say, before you find love within yourself, you're looking for it everywhere around you, right? And then at some point you realize that love is inside of you. And then from that point, love is again outside of you. And that's the fun part of life, where it seems like the world is dancing with you rather than at you. You know what I mean? The life is happening through you rather than to you. And then you see how there is a greater connectivity in between you and everything else around you, to the point where it's a little bit mind-blowing, but not like, oh my god, wow, that's so amazing, but rather like, are you kidding me? You know, you may find yourself getting being in a situation, for example, where you're puzzled with something, you gotta solve something is just, you have no idea what to do. And then on the way from A to B, let's say you're walking through the city and you find a graffiti on the wall that seems like it's speaking directly to you, and it shows up, you notice it in exactly the right moment at the right time, and you're like, how? Right? And so, and sometimes you can find information that it seems like it's directed directly at you and it's for you, but you find it in a source that is very unlikely to be for you only. Depends on how you identify yourself. Some people like to be a drop in the ocean and they like to be a part of the collective, and they don't consider themselves as a unit that is too sovereign or too autonomous or too individualistic. They are a part of the current, and this is how they identify themselves, and this is where they feel comfortable. So these people are likely to when they're in this situation where they're a little bit puzzled and then they're looking for a clue, they are less likely to accept the information that comes from an obscure source. They will more likely accept an information that comes from a source that is validated by everybody else. For example, let's say you're looking for a restaurant and you love mushrooms and you want to eat mushrooms and you're looking for a restaurant, but if you identify yourself as a part of the group, you are going to choose a restaurant depending on quality of reviews that each restaurant has. And you're more likely to choose a restaurant that has great reviews and that more people have already been there and approve of that restaurant, rather than listen to your own stomach telling you that you want to eat mushrooms. And you may find mushrooms in a restaurant that has very few reviews, if any, maybe even has a bad review. But you'll be like, how is this restaurant having mushrooms? And how is this restaurant the only restaurant that has mushrooms? You'll be puzzled to go there, because you'll be like, I do want to eat mushrooms, I love mushrooms, and I'm glad that there is a restaurant that is having mushrooms. But you're like, I don't know if I can trust it because no reviews. Or vice versa. You might identify yourself as an individual or as an alone being, lone wolf. You're on your own. You kind of have a feeling that even if you're not alone, even if you're surrounded by so many people, you're kind of feeling like you're one of a kind in one way or another. And then let's say that as such individual, you do value something that is obscure, something that is individualistic, something that is excluded, something that is outside of the norm, something that speaks authenticity, originality, or something that is maybe intentionally not part of the masses. But then you might find yourself again being in a situation when you're looking for a clue, and you find that clue through a mainstream source. For example, if you're in a situation, you're looking for a clue, and then you look at a YouTube video where the YouTuber is literally saying something that is so on point with where you're at right now, what you need to hear, what really opens your eyes, what really realigns you, what really gives you another perspective of how you can relate to the things and the world around you. And it really comes as a medicine, as like exactly what it is that you need at this moment in time. But then you look at the video and you see that the same video has been seen by 33,000 people. And then you wonder, if 33,000 people have received the same information, how good is that information then? Is it really for me, or am I just imagining things? Should I take it? Will that make me part of the masses? No, that opens a possibility for another conversation on that topic, but I'll just keep it here. Because sometimes I found myself in exactly that situation where I would find a clue, a solution, in a completely unexpected place, or in a place where I would be like, I don't want to identify what source of that information. It's just kind of not my vibe. Alright? But here is the image that is being shown to me that really just kind of illustrates the situation. So while you are in the situation, the chemical reaction between the energy of the situation, which is people and places and circumstances and location of the planet and so on, that energy is being matched with your individual unique energy, even if you don't identify as individual, your unique soul blueprint. And the connection of the two of you creates, let's say, some sort of like a chemical reaction. And while you're in this situation, you get a chance to see the world around you from the standpoint of being in this situation. Which means, let's say that you get lens of being in that situation, which are, let's say, this chemical reaction that creates itself as a result of you being in contact with something else, creates some sort of like a ultraviolet color. And now imagine you're in a room full of objects, which you are. And imagine that each object is in a color that is visible to the human eye, which it is. Nothing to imagine, actually just look around yourself. And now imagine that because you're in a situation where you are, which can be big or small, life chapter or passing thing, allows you to see objects around you that are ultraviolet. You can spot ultraviolet objects around yourself. And so there's that one object that is visible to everybody. So everybody can come and see, and they'll be like, yeah, that object is here. Everybody can interact with that object. They can take it, see it from all perspectives. They can play with it, they can throw it and toss it and put it back, and they can do whatever they want with it. And so can you. And so you can even invite one of your friends to stand where you stand, but he's going to stand with his own unique frequency and look at the same object that you're pointing at, and you can ask him, do you see what I see? And he's going to be like, yeah, I see an object. And you'll be like, what's the color of the object? And it will be, the color is perfect. Perfect. The color is purple. And you'd be like, purple, you mean violet? And he's like, yeah, it's violet. And then you're like, okay. But he didn't say ultraviolet, because he sees it only as violet. But you see it as ultraviolet because that's the color of the lens that you are looking through. So even if you come to interact with an information or a clue that is being provided to you by the universe or the world around you, even if that information has been given to so many other people, it doesn't mean that they're going to use it in the same way for the same purpose that you do. Because they have their own reasons and their own point of looking at it and their own way of interacting with it. In the end, they may really not see it for the reason why you are seeing it. It might mean completely something else to them. On a similar scheme, people choose their partners too. Or they could, or should. I hope that makes sense. Last night I went out for a walk, and should I say this? I've been having a walk where I normally have a walk, but last night I've noticed a building that I never noticed before. Which was a little bit like, where have I been looking the whole time, right? I've been passing next to that building, but I never really noticed. What makes that building so special? And what makes it so special is that it has blue walls and the red stripe in the middle of the construction of the building, and in the middle of the red stripe there is the door. And I take photos of everything that is red and blue, so of course I took a photo of it, and of course it looked like a portal, and I took a photo of it, and in the moment of taking a photo of it I had a flash of insight. And the insight I had was very similar to the one where I said in the previous video that you are the multiple vortex tornado. If you haven't checked, you can check it out over there, so I don't feel the need to repeat myself in this moment. But it's about you where you are right now is a result of something that you went through maybe years ago, maybe decades ago, in some period of time in your life that might have been really, really heavy. So I'm talking about something that happened which was really, I would even dare to say, extremely difficult. Something that was traumatic, something that required a lot of time to recover from. Maybe you did something, maybe you made some risk, maybe you embarrassed yourself in a heavy way, maybe you had really, really difficult breakups, maybe you had really difficult change of life scenery that really took a toll on you. Something really, really difficult, something that really marked a time of your life in a particular way. And as I said, it took you a lot of time to recover from it. And it's been a challenge to recover yourself from it. But now it's been a while since that happened, and I'm not trying to bring it up back into this moment in case you have already released that and that's like a chapter closed, case closed, move on kind of a thing. But I do want to say that right now where you are is a result of you going through these circumstances. In terms of going through that circumstance was a portal through which you had to pass in order to find yourself being here where you are. And by being here where you are, I don't mean that in terms of, maybe it does apply to you in terms of physical location, where you are on the map of the world. But it's more about who you are, your structure of being, how you identify yourself, what makes you you at this moment in time. I'm having a hard time using those words. They're very popular. And they are literally, spirit was testing you. And I'm looking for other words how to say exactly the same thing, but basically, yeah, spirit was testing you. That was your own soul testing you and the spirits around you testing you, whether you would really like to be where you are, because where you are, who you are today, was something that you really wanted for yourself at some moment in time, which I think kind of removes the heaviness from it. You don't need to necessarily carry that into the future as something traumatic, something heavy, something that you had to recover from, something you had to heal, something that was horrible. Now you can see it as something that was given to you, like a gap in between balconies that you had to jump, and you jumped. And now I'm going to be speaking to parents. Whether you're about to be a parent or you are a parent. Do you see what I see? That here? It's a spark. If you don't see, I'll come closer. So, this is a spark. It's a spark of life, right? It's a spark of life, it's an electrical current, it's a soul blueprint, just like my painting over there in the background. I tried to come closer to show you from up there, so you better see what I'm doing here. But my lens are really loud, so I'm just gonna be here and I will zoom it for you later. So this is a spark of life. It's a soul essence, it's an electrical current. Basically, it's a seed of a human being. When a soul decides to come to the planet in a human form, the soul knows it's going to become a human. It is its choice, so to say. So with or without you in the picture, even if you, for some whatever reason, be removed from the being that you bring into the planet, that being is going to become a human. If it signed up for a human experience, it's going to be a human. It's not going to turn into a dog or a plant, right? It's a human. So, your job as a parent is to create a structure of that being, which is the outline of its experience. So you are the one who is making the outline, who is making a structure of its being, basically, yeah. And your job is to paint the inside. So not just to create the outline, but also to paint the space inside. And how do you paint that space? Is by being in communication with the soul essence, with the being. So how you communicate and the quality of the communication naturally creates this picture, right? And why I'm saying this and why is this important is because on the planet there are still parents who are so caught up in what's going on the planet and with their own circumstances and with their own inner children that they sometimes honor the state of the planet and their outside circumstances and the energies that they embody that might not be the most beneficial for painting here inside, right? So what they do as a result is they try to create the structure of the soul's being by painting outside. And they're painting from outside in. So they're trying to, so they paint the outside world, right, as chaotic, difficult. There is no money and stuff like this. It's dangerous out there. So on. They paint the outside world and they try to impose the structure onto the spark, which can be bad. Because while people honor the outside circumstances and the world, they often, the same attention that is being given to the outside is being at the same time removed from the inside, right? So instead of honoring the world, you're being called upon to honor the soul of the being that you bring into the planet. Because if you don't, if you honor the world and you try to prepare the soul for the world by making the world bigger than the soul in terms of, as I already mentioned, the world is a dangerous place, there's a chaos, there's this and that happening. If you put your attention onto the world, you are depriving the soul from your own attention. And at least at the beginning of life, that's very necessary, right? Because that spark of life it's like a birth of a star. It's pure love. And your job is to create a safe container where the pure love can remain pure love and safely move through the world that is unsafe, right? But then you create this membrane in between. If you put a lot of attention on the outside world, you neglect the inside world of the spark, of the soul. Practically speaking, how that looks when a parent is putting more attention onto the world and when it's coming from the outside from the world towards the small being, is that they have an idea of how to protect the child, for example, and their idea is that the child needs to embody certain profession or certain skill set or a certain way of behavior or being in order to avoid the chaos of the world, which is essentially being driven by the fear of the world and goes against the spark of life, which is pure love. What you're being called for here is to enter the communication with the pure love and start from there towards the world. What's the actual point of all of it? Well, you're being called to have trust and faith in the soul of the being that you're bringing onto the planet. Because that soul is meant to be a human. It is coded and designed to have a human experience and to be a human that lives on the planet Earth. You're called for having trust and faith that this being, by default, has its own internal guidance system, or as Abraham Hicks would say, it has its own inner being that might lead itself, the life expression, the being, the human, or its experience in the ways that are outside of your own scope of reality. So if you, for example, if you create a child and you make him to be a ballet dancer, for example, but they decide to become a truck driver, you may not feel safe for them to be a truck driver because you see them and you saw them and you thought that their best way of surviving in this world is to become a ballet dancer. But you're called upon having a trust and faith that they have their own way of being in this world, simply because they are designed to live on this planet. Because the world needs love. I hope I explained it well today. I think I explained it well. I had a hard time transmitting this message because me, myself, I don't have children. The only child I have, or the only children I have, is me and my spiders. And the only parent that I am is the parent to myself. So I can totally imagine some of you being like, Dolores, what do you know? You're not going to tell me how I raise my children. And you're totally right, it's none of my business, really. But from the perspective of being a child of my parents, and from the perspective of being a soul that has a human experience, I do agree with this message. I do agree with the fact that it is important to communicate with the soul of the young being and nurture it and let it know that it is in the unsafe world that there are times and spaces and people who can make it safe for them to be here fully. Because the world needs more love, does it? I think the world is already love. The world is everything. And last but not least, just like I made this picture here to show you the vision that I was getting, I can also paint energy that I get from you, make a picture and then make an energy reading out of it. I call these things energy portraits. So if you want one, I will put my info down there in the description. Thank you for being here. Ciao.